My name is Eleanor, or Ellie to my friends, and as last autumn's leaves turned golden in Boston, I found myself embracing the pre-holiday culinary scene a little too enthusiastically. The result? A neat 10 pounds settled comfortably around my middle. Now, at 43, I'm diligently counting calories, a preemptive strike against the festive feasting that stretches from Thanksgiving through the New Year. My logic is impeccable. Shed the weight now, so the inevitable indulgence doesn't tip the scales too dramatically. A flawless plan, right? Between the turkey, the Christmas cookies, and the New Year's Eve champagne, it's a delightful gauntlet of temptations. I might even allow myself a few artisanal truffles for Valentine's. Honestly, I'm already picturing the dessert spreads. It seems this year, like all the others, might just end with a softly padded silhouette. But today, I want to share a story from a different kind of Boston winter, back when I was 23. After a courtship of several years, my engagement to Ethan, my then boyfriend, felt imminent. The time had arrived for the pivotal Meet the Parents dinner, a formal affair at their Cambridge townhouse, subtly signaling our intentions. My parents, a sociology professor and a retired architect, were quite taken with Ethan, which promised smooth sailing for any discussions about our future. However, the evening took an unexpected turn when my older sister, Brenda, 3 years my senior, arrived home from her job at a downtown department store. From the moment she laid eyes on Ethan, it was abundantly clear she was captivated. Sisters possess a peculiar radar for each other's unspoken feelings, and it didn't take a psychic to see Brenda had developed an instant, intense crush. I silently hoped it was a fleeting infatuation. Yet, during their introduction, a deep blush crept up her neck, and she seemed to hold onto his hand a fraction too long. Her eyes, usually sharp and appraising, took on a rather dreamy quality. As inappropriate as it felt for her to be so transparently smitten with my fiancé, I mentally filed it under uncontrollable hormonal surge and decided to ignore it, trusting Brenda wouldn't actually act on these sudden feelings. But things escalated dramatically after Ethan left. Fresh from her shower, wrapped in a terry cloth robe, Brenda cornered me in my bedroom, her tone surprisingly forceful. "You need to break it off with him, Ellie," she declared. She accused Ethan of being a smooth operator, a player, insisting I could find someone more genuine. Despite her passionate pronouncements, she offered no evidence, relying solely on what she termed a woman's gut feeling. Considering Brenda had never had a serious relationship, let alone navigated the complexities of long-term commitment, I found it difficult to credit her intuition. After years of knowing Ethan, I trusted his character and our connection. I chose to focus on our relationship rather than the melodrama brewing with my sister. Naturally, I didn't take her warnings to heart, merely brushing them off with a non-committal, "Okay, Bren, I'll keep an eye out." Since that conversation, Ethan began visiting our family home more frequently. He expressed a genuine desire to build a strong rapport with my family, a sentiment I found incredibly endearing. I was optimistic this would solidify his already positive standing with my parents and pave the way for a harmonious, blended family. However, Brenda's behavior introduced a persistent, awkward undercurrent. According to Ethan, whenever I wasn't in the immediate vicinity, she would become overly familiar, a lingering touch on his arm, leaning in a little too close during conversations, even questioning my suitability for him with remarks like, "Don't you think Ellie's a bit whimsical sometimes?" She even went so far as to ask for his personal cell number and, on one occasion, accidentally stumbled while reaching for a book, her robe gaping open to reveal her lingerie. Ethan, bless his heart, found these attempts more amusing than enticing, which was a profound relief. It could have been deeply troubling if he were the sort of man swayed by such overtures. Despite her forwardness, Brenda perhaps believed she had a chance with Ethan because he couldn't outright rebuff her without creating an uncomfortable family situation, given she was my sister. Each time they met, she'd greet him with a saccharine "he, Ethan," clearly trying to charm him, not just because of her initial infatuation, but also because Ethan was a rising star at Sterling Financial Group, a prestigious investment firm. She seemed to view him as the ultimate prize, someone who could offer a secure, affluent future. He's so dependable, and he has that kind of strong jawline I like. Plus, he's just a fundamentally good guy. She'd confide in me, her eyes shining. Throughout all this, my parents remained conspicuously silent about her inappropriate conduct. This wasn't entirely new. They'd always been somewhat hands-off when it came to addressing Brenda's more eccentric behaviors. Historically, Brenda was the sibling who often fumbled. For instance, if asked to warm up leftovers, she'd invariably use a non-microwavable plastic container, resulting in a melted, inedible mess. Academically and athletically, she'd never quite excelled, frequently finding excuses to skip soccer practice, a twisted ankle, a sudden headache, a mysterious skin rash. And household responsibilities? She had no natural aptitude for those either. In truth, her appearance was pleasant but unremarkable. Yet, despite these various shortcomings, Brenda had an uncanny talent for becoming the epicenter of some sort of drama, just as she was now with Ethan. As the eldest, Brenda had always been subject to a certain level of parental indulgence. They seemed to have tacitly assigned me the role of her quiet supporter, the one who smoothed things over. I was often encouraged to let Brenda have her moment while I stayed in the background, a dynamic I found increasingly irksome. It seemed my parents perceived her as somewhat less capable, perhaps eliciting a pity that fueled their permissiveness. I, on the other hand, had always been organized and adept at managing tasks efficiently. Perhaps, for adults, there's less satisfaction in mentoring someone who already demonstrates self-sufficiency. Consequently, prioritizing Brenda's needs and occasionally downplaying my own achievements in public became an ingrained habit. However, as I matured and recognized the value of my own accomplishments, particularly in my studies, I began to push back against this family script. Had I continued to acquiesce, I might have inadvertently sabotaged my own potential. My quiet rebellion seemed to create a subtle friction with Brenda, who perhaps felt a withdrawal of her accustomed support. Yet, our relationship wasn't overtly strained. We could still converse civilly, and I often found myself giving her advice. Our family dynamic was certainly unique, marked by an overprotective stance towards Brenda and a simmering resentment on her part, but I still considered us a relatively normal family. However, this delicate equilibrium was shattered when Ethan, my fiancé, failed to reciprocate Brenda's affections. Her frustration reached a boiling point on the eve of our wedding. She cornered our parents in the living room, voicing a common, if somewhat outdated, grievance about sibling marriage order. I just can't handle my younger sister getting married before me. My parents attempted to placate her. Don't worry, sweetheart. You'll find someone wonderful soon too, Brenda. Despite their reassurances, the notion that the elder sister must marry first and that it was somehow premature for me to wed was a contentious point that hung heavy in the air. But the wedding is tomorrow. What are you saying, Mom? Don't you even care about my feelings? I'm going to be the pathetic older sister left behind, Brenda wailed that night. I overheard the increasingly agitated discussion from the hallway landing. Was it truly a catastrophe for her to marry after me? If I'd waited for her timeline, I could have lost years. Her outburst felt disproportionate. After she'd vented, I assumed she would eventually calm down. Instead, she issued an astonishing ultimatum. Mom and Dad will not be attending the wedding tomorrow. That's the only way I'll be satisfied, Brenda. I was floored. Both my parents had agreed not to come to my wedding, all to appease my sister. It felt as if they were part of some strange sect where Brenda held all the sway. This was far beyond simple indulgence. Fine, I'll compromise. Let her have her little wedding that no one important acknowledges, Brenda grudgingly conceded. It was painfully obvious she didn't want me to marry Ethan, driven by her own unrequited feelings for him. The stark reality hit me. a wedding ceremony without my parents present, all because of my sister's misguided obsession. My wedding day was anything but the joyous occasion I'd dreamed of. Anxiety had kept me tossing and turning the night before, not bridal jitters, but a sickening dread replaying the distressing conversation between Brenda and my parents. I couldn't shake the image of Brenda's subtly triumphant smirk when she heard our parents wouldn't attend. At the Old South Church, I had the agonizing task of explaining to Ethan and his parents, the Hamiltons, why mine wouldn't be there. I am so incredibly sorry, but my sister is strongly opposed to this marriage, and as a result, my parents won't be attending, I managed to say, the words catching in my throat. It was a humiliating, heart-wrenching admission. My future in-laws were visibly taken aback, struggling to comprehend that parents would willingly miss their daughter's wedding. A heavy silence descended. Sensing the oppressive atmosphere, Mrs. Hamilton took my hand, and Mr. Hamilton placed his hand over ours. Eleanor, remember that we are your family now. Don't let this cast a shadow on your day. Come on, let's see a smile, my mother-in-law said, her voice radiating a warmth that was so absent from my own family. At that moment, standing there in my wedding gown, tears pricked my eyes. But Ethan stepped to my side, gently stroking my hair. Ellie, he murmured, I'm here. I'm your husband. That's all that matters right now. Seeing me on the verge of tears, my in-laws and Ethan quickly tried to lighten the mood. No crying. You're the bride, your makeup will run. They teased gently. Then, Mrs. Hamilton looked at me with earnest kindness. Ellie, your family situation is challenging. But today is a new beginning, a wonderful start. Let's focus on building your family. Despite feeling utterly abandoned by my own blood, I felt a strong, comforting embrace from my mother-in-law, soon joined by Ethan and my father-in-law. I repeated her words to myself. This is a new beginning. I resolved, then and there, to build my own happy, supportive family. That day, Ethan and I were married, marking the true beginning of our life together. 13 years have passed since that bittersweet ceremony. Ethan and I have been blessed with 3 wonderful children, our astute daughter, Amelia, who seems to navigate every challenge with grace, and our twin tornadoes, Leo and Max, who delight in orchestrating minor chaos throughout our Brookline Victorian. Sometimes I hear myself exclaim, all right, you two, that's enough, and I'm startled by how much I sound like a bona fide, in-charge mom. Ethan's career at Sterling Financial has thrived, we've bought our home, and we've cultivated a life of stability and contentment. Then, one Saturday afternoon, unexpected figures materialized on our doorstep, my father, my mother, and Brenda. After the wedding, I had maintained a polite but firm distance from my family, never sharing our new address. Somehow, they had tracked us down and arrived unannounced. Naturally, the words that greeted them weren't a warm, long time no see, but a wary, what do you want? To which Brenda, looking surprisingly smug, replied, I have a favor to ask of you, Ellie. My parents chimed in, it's something only you can do for us, their expressions earnest and pleading. I was utterly bewildered, wondering what on earth they could possibly need from me after 13 years of near estrangement. I remained silent, a mixture of morbid curiosity and apprehension churning within me, as my mother finally spoke. We want you to give Ethan to your sister. Both Ethan and I stared, dumbfounded. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Give Ethan away? I asked, my voice sharp with disbelief and a rising alarm at the sheer audacity of the request. When I pressed them, my parents looked away, a flush of guilt coloring their faces, while Brenda stood there, chin high, radiating an unearned confidence. Despite being 39 and still single, she seemed unfazed by her circumstances, which now included unemployment after her latest employer, a small data entry firm, had downsized. It's a difficult situation, my father began, his voice hesitant. We're worried about Brenda's future, Ellie. Single, no job. We hope you can understand. As sisters, surely you feel for her. Internally, I shot back a resounding, "No, I absolutely do not," but I held my tongue, morbidly curious to hear the rest of their preposterous proposal. My frustration mounted as my father continued, each word more ludicrous than the last. "She's always had a soft spot for Ethan, you know. And she's still alone, really, because of him. You've had your time with Ethan, haven't you? A good 13 years. Couldn't you please let your sister have him for the rest of her life?" "What in God's name are you talking about?" I finally burst out, incredulous. Ethan, beside me, was equally stunned, struggling to form words. Meanwhile, my parents continued their desperate, misguided pleas, and Brenda maintained her haughty demeanor, utterly convinced she would get her way. Given my parents' long history of capitulating to her whims, it wasn't entirely surprising she believed this insane request would actually be granted. As I stood there, utterly flabbergasted, Ethan subtly pulled me aside. "Ellie," he whispered, a strange glint in his eye, "this might actually be our chance to end this circus once and for all. Remember that ridiculous what-if scenario you joked about once when you'd had a bit too much wine? It's like it's playing out for real." Emboldened by a sudden, shared surge of mischievous inspiration, we turned back to my family. "Brenda," I began, my voice carefully neutral, "do you really love Ethan that much?" Taken aback by the directness of my question, Brenda stammered, visibly flustered, "Yes. Yes, I've loved him all this time." "That's quite a long time to harbor feelings for someone married to your sister," I observed. Her response was filled with a dramatic conviction. "It's been agony watching you two together. It should have been me with him." Stunned by the intensity of her declaration, Ethan and I fought to keep straight faces. I decided to lean into the absurdity. "Well, if you love him that much," I declared, my voice ringing with false magnanimity, "I'll step aside." The pronouncement sent ripples of shock through the room, especially from my parents. "Eleanor, really? Don't you love Ethan?" my mother interjected, her eyes wide. "No, actually," Ethan chimed in, playing his part beautifully. "To tell you the truth, Mrs. Peterson, I've always had a secret admiration for Brenda." Brenda's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Really?" "Oh, Ethan, I knew it." This surreal exchange left everyone reeling, as Ethan and I observed their reactions, biting the insides of our cheeks to keep from laughing at the ludicrous charade we had orchestrated. The truth, of course, was that Ethan and I were as solid as the New England granite, but sometimes embracing a ridiculous premise was the only way to expose its inherent folly. As I gave Ethan a dramatic, sorrowful hug, I saw his eyes crinkle at the corners with barely suppressed mirth. "I've waited so long for this moment, Brenda," he said, his voice thick with feigned emotion. Beside me, Ethan pretended to sniffle, but his shaking shoulders were a dead giveaway. "We just have to get through this performance," I whispered to him under my breath. "We'll always be together." Suddenly, Brenda began addressing Ethan with an easy familiarity, as if they'd been sharing intimate secrets for years. It sounded surprisingly natural, as though, in her own mind, she had indeed been living out a romantic drama with Ethan for the past 13 years. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so happy." "Please, let me be your support from now on," Brenda said, her voice breathy. "Yes, absolutely, my dear," Ethan replied with a wide, almost manic grin. "So, first things first, I'm going to quit my job at Sterling Financial." "Really?" Ethan's announcement wiped the ecstatic blush from Brenda's face, replacing it with a look of utter shock. "I want to be with you, Brenda, all the time. Every moment. So, I'm quitting my job to be constantly by your side. I won't even leave the house. I'll follow you to the bathroom, watch you do chores. We'll be inseparable." Ethan's cheerful, almost unhinged tone left Brenda visibly flustered and starting to panic. Our parents, too, couldn't hide their unease. But I'm not working either, and, well, this is a bit troubling," she stammered. "What's troubling about it? If we're together, we have nothing to fear. We don't need money to be happy, just love." Ethan continued, pushing the absurdity to its limits. But Ethan, these days, you need health insurance, a mortgage. It's not like the old days. We can't just live on love if there's no income. Seizing the moment, I chimed in, my voice laced with faux concern, and Ethan, dear, if we do proceed with this divorce, I'll naturally be requiring a generous portion of our marital assets, including a significant payout from the equity in this house. So you'd better be prepared to liquidate. Don't you worry your pretty little head about that, Ellie, Ethan replied with a dismissive wave of his hand, winking at me. Brenda and her wonderful parents will take care of all the financial obligations, won't you? Hearing this, our parents went pale and exchanged horrified glances. Brenda, my mother said, her voice suddenly strained. This is very difficult to say, but this isn't right. Stealing a husband from your own sister. Exactly, Brenda. That is indeed the case, my father added, his previous passion for her cause completely deflated. It was as if a switch had flipped and they'd suddenly regained their senses. What are you talking about? Brenda shrieked, her face contorting. You promised you'd help me get Ethan. But Brenda, that was before. My father began. I don't want to hear it, my mother interjected sharply. Doesn't anyone support me? As Brenda began to rant, she actually grabbed a handful of our mother's hair, and my father struggled to separate them amidst the escalating chaos. In the ensuing commotion, Ethan calmly raised his voice, capturing everyone's attention. Honestly, Brenda, he said, his tone now devoid of any pretense, you are not my type. I respect you as Eleanor's sister, but beyond that, I have no desire for further interaction. And that hopeful, upward gaze you always give me? It actually makes me quite uncomfortable. The thought that someone has been harboring these unrequited feelings for me for over a decade is, frankly, rather disturbing. Ethan's candid, brutal honesty left both Brenda and our parents speechless. But Ethan, Brenda demanded, her voice trembling, what was all that talk just now? Please stop addressing my husband with such familiarity, Brenda, I interjected firmly. There is absolutely no way he could ever be interested in you. It's time to face reality. As I watched Brenda, her face ashen, take a tentative step towards Ethan, I moved to stand beside him. We have a family, Brenda. We are happy. We are settled. Her steps faltered, and she turned to face me, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? You tricked me, she exclaimed. How can you seriously believe that a man who hasn't initiated contact with you in 13 years is secretly in love with you? Isn't that just a little delusional? I challenged her, hoping to inject a dose of cold, hard reality into the situation. Her face flushed a deep crimson, and tears of rage and humiliation welled in her eyes. If you were genuinely an attractive prospect, perhaps there'd be a sliver of a chance. But honestly, Brenda, who finds charm in someone unemployed, entirely dependent on their aging parents, and lacking any real self-sufficiency because her mother has catered to her every whim her entire life. I continued, my words sharp and unyielding. Behind me, I heard Ethan let out a small, quickly suppressed snort. Understanding the brutal truth of my words, struck by the stark reality, Brenda's frustration finally erupted into loud, convulsive sobs, her tears unstoppable. Our parents, attempting to console her, looked on with expressions of dawning comprehension and profound dismay, as if finally, truly acknowledging the depth of the problem they had enabled. Therefore, I am not handing over Ethan. Please give up, Brenda, I stated, my voice firm but weary. At this, Brenda's crying intensified, her sobs taking on a childlike, unseemly quality for a woman nearing 40. Take this entire experience as a much-needed lesson and please, do not involve yourselves with our family again. No matter how much trouble you find yourselves in the future, do not expect any assistance from us, I declared, feeling the definitive weight of my words as I slowly closed the front door on their shocked faces. When my children, drawn by the commotion, asked what had happened, I responded lightly, "Oh, it's getting close to Halloween, so it seems a rather confused trick-or-treater came a bit early." Amelia, ever pragmatic, suggested, "Maybe we should leave out a bowl of candy next time, just in case." Although I dismissed the idea with a smile, the echoes of Brenda's wails from the other side of the door did sound unnervingly like a tormented spirit. Another 7 years have passed, bringing me to my current 43. Brenda remains single. She did manage to secure a few administrative positions, but her persistently inappropriate workplace behavior and sense of entitlement eventually led to her dismissal from each. A few disastrous attempts at rushed relationships, followed by dramatic fallouts, apparently got her quietly blacklisted from the local matchmaking services. It seems increasingly likely she will remain single for life. My parents are still working part-time, my father at a local hardware store and my mother volunteering extensively at the library, tirelessly trying to build a small nest egg for Brenda's sake. They probably realize now, with a heavy heart, that they cannot rely on her for their own future care. I hope, for their sake, they've truly grasped the long-term consequences of their decades of indulgence. After all my years primarily as a homemaker, I've been fortunate not to worry about tuition fees, thanks to our children's academic achievements and Ethan's stable, successful career. Sometimes I do wonder if a demanding job outside the home would help me combat the extra pounds that creep on during the festive season. Amelia, who is naturally willowy and currently navigating a growth spurt, has started tentatively talking about diets, but I gently encourage her to hold off. "Think about that when you're older, sweetheart, like me," I tell her with a wink. Leo and Max are passionately devoted to competitive dance and recently made a splash at a regional showcase, bringing home several trophies. Brimming with newfound confidence, they now dream of one day auditioning for a major dance company, so I find myself secretly hoping these troupes remain popular long enough for my boys to have a shot at their dreams. We are blessed with regular visits from the Hamiltons, who are as dear to me as any parents could be. We relish the delightful, laughter-filled meals we share. With spring break on the horizon, we're planning a family trip to a spa resort in Vermont, eagerly anticipating some quality relaxation and togetherness. Despite the significant challenges I faced in the years leading up to my marriage, my life now is brimming with a quiet, profound happiness, strengthening the genuine, hard-won bonds of my chosen family. I cherish the contentment that fills my days and look forward to many more years of health and shared joy, hoping to weave countless more precious moments with our loved ones.